Hey guys, tonight we're taking a sleepy little stroll through Mount Selene in Arcadia, somewhere in the crisp morning haze of ancient Greece where the caves are cool and mossy, and the air hums with the lazy songs of mountain bees. But don't get too cozy just yet because a baby's about to be born and not just any baby. This one's already plotting a felony by lunchtime. You, dear listener, are slipping into the skin of the nymph Maya. You've just given birth to a suspiciously precocious infant named Hermes. The cave is quiet, no screaming nurses, no golden cribs, just soft light filtering in a few lounging lizards and the distant bleat of a goat. But your newborn, he's not wailing or suckling, he's fiddling with some reeds, and is that a shoelace? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love knowing who's dozing off with me around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Hermes doesn't even wait for his umbilical cord to finish drying before he's wriggling out of his swaddling cloth. His little fingers are already twitching with invention. Somewhere between his first blink and second burp, he decides that lying around and babbling simply will not do. No, sir, he has plans. Sir, you poor Maya try to nap off the postpartum fog, blissfully unaware that your baby has slipped out of the cave like a tiny bandit in training. And what's the first thing he does? He invents sandals. Yep, actual sandals, with bark for soles and straps from myrtle twine. And he wears them backward, because why make it easy for anyone to follow his tracks? Historians still argue whether this backward sandal bit was meant as a literal detail or just some poetic flair that got out of hand over the centuries, but either way, the symbolism is rich. Little Hermes is already walking the world out of step. Out on the Arcadian plains, the grasses swish and sway like they know something's up. You follow in your imagination drifting on Hermes' trail as he toddles through fields that smell like thyme and fresh manure. He's following a particular scent, musky, grassy, with the faintest aroma of divine indignation. It's Apollo's sacred cattle herd, and Hermes, still fresh from the womb, is on a mission. But he's not charging in. He's calculating. Somewhere in the shadows of this story, you get the sense that Hermes isn't just playing at mischief. He is mischief. And this whole caper, it's less about theft and more like a prank on a cosmic scale. Not for wealth, not for vengeance, just because he can. As he closes in on the herd, he plucks a reed from a stream bank. He twirls it, hums into it. A proto-panpipe melody leaks out eerie and charming. The kind of tune that would make a cow forget where it's supposed to be standing. Just a baby, and already Hermes is laying the groundwork for two entirely new industries, music and marketing. A nearby tortoise lumbers past, giving Hermes the side eye. Not suspicious, just confused. Because, honestly, who expects a newborn to be casing a cattle yard? And here's a fun fringe tidbit. The myth doesn't even flinch at the idea that Hermes is fully mobile within minutes of birth. Ancient Greek audiences, totally fine with that. They had no time for developmental milestones. Crawl, walk, lasso cattle, it's all the same when you're divine. Back at the cave, Maya rolls over and probably dreams of a quiet afternoon. Instead, she's got a future god with sticky fingers and a to-do list longer than Mount Olympus is tall. As dusk creeps across the Arcadian hills, Hermes watches the sun dip below the horizon, the very sun god whose cattle he's about to lift. A bold move, really. Stealing from Apollo is like stealing sunscreen from a fire-breathing dragon. Still, Hermes grins, or maybe he gurgles. Either way, there's no fear in his wide, curious eyes, only anticipation. You're floating now, drifting gently just behind Hermes, as the baby god creeps closer to Apollo's sacred cattle. The sun's last rays skim across the herd's glossy hides, each cow massive and serene, chewing cud with that zoned-out bovine calm. They have no clue that a diaper-clad toddler is about to make off with half their population. The breeze ruffles Hermes' curls as he surveys the field, his tiny brow furrowed in strategic thought. He isn't strong enough to drive the herd with brute force, but who needs strength when you have cunning and a reverse-engineered pair of sandals? Here's your mainstream fact for the evening. In Greek mythology, cattle weren't just livestock. They were symbols of status, sacrifice, and wealth. Apollo's herd in particular was divine property, sacred and untouchable. You didn't mess with Apollo's cows unless you had a death wish or a supernatural flair for plausible deniability. Hermes starts by picking out exactly 50 cows. Not 49, not 51. That's the kind of baby he is precise. He hushes them one by one, stroking their sides, whispering who knows what into their soft, flappy ears. Maybe cow poetry. Maybe an impromptu TED Talk on forward momentum. Then the mischief really begins. With those backward-worn sandals and some leafy branches used to brush away hoofprints, Hermes effectively moonwalks the entire herd out of the field. Each hoofstep is masked, each trace covered. You have to admire the dedication. It's less of a theft and more of an interpretive dance. Historians still argue whether this entire sequence was meant to be interpreted as a dream, an allegory, or an actual divine event, complete with celestial cows trotting backwards down a dusty road. But hey, it's Greek mythology. We're playing by barred logic, not biology. And now the cows are moving. Not mooing, not panicking, just moving. Guided by the faint hum of that homemade reed pipe, Hermes leads them through the underbrush into the wild away from Apollo's sun-drenched meadows and into some goat-smelling cave out in the boonies. Of course, he doesn't do it all with charm. At one point, Hermes gets creative. He uses long vines to loosely tie tufts of grass to the cows' tails, dragging them behind like crude brooms to scrub out hoofprints. It's effective, it's absurd, it's very on brand. And what does our little trickster do once the cows are stashed away? He celebrates. But not with a nap. Oh no, that would be far too logical. Instead, he turns his attention to a new project, a tortoise he passed earlier on the trail. Yes, the same one that side-eyed him during his cattle heist reconnaissance. This friend is where Hermes' multitasking hits a whole new level. He picks up the tortoise gently, we hope, and considers it thoughtfully like a Renaissance inventor, eyeing a raw idea. Then, with a shrug and a grin, he hollows out the shell string, some gut across it, and creates the world's first lyre. Yes, that lyre. The one that would eventually become synonymous with Apollo himself. Right now, though, it's just a tortoise-turned banjo being plucked by a newborn who hasn't even been alive for 12 hours. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit. Ancient sources love this detail. In fact, the tortoise's lyre origin is one of the more oddly specific and consistent parts of the Hermes myth. No one's entirely sure why it had to be a tortoise. Maybe because it was handy. Maybe because tortoises just look like they contain music. Hermes strums a few lazy notes and hums along. You can almost hear the tune, something gentle and strange, a melody that smells like sweet olives and sounds like laughter muffled by wool. A lullaby for stolen cows. You linger here with him a moment longer, listening to those sleepy twangs echo off cave walls. The lyre glows faintly in the dim light, as if even the instrument knows it's going to be famous. And while Hermes is feeling smug and musical miles away, Apollo's beginning to suspect something is very, very off. You hover now over Apollo's sun-drenched temple, perched like a sleepy seagull on the marble lintel. Morning glints off polished columns, the scent of laurel hangs thick in the air, and lyre's normal ones, not tortoise-based, twang softly in the background. All is serene, except for Apollo's frown. He's squinting across the hills of Arcadia, his eyes like twin searchlights. Something is missing. Something large mooing and probably nibbling temple shrubbery right about now. Yep. His sacred cattle are gone. Vanished, like socks after laundry. Apollo god of music, prophecy, sunlight. And on this particular morning, simmering irritation calls out to his herdsmen. Anyone misplaced, say, 50 divine cows. The herdsmen understandably terrified point in vague directions and offer excuses that involve windstorms, drunk satyrs, and possibly gluten. None of it flies. Apollo's sandal hits the ground with a thud that echoes across Olympus. Here's your mainstream myth fact. For the day, Apollo wasn't just the god of sunlight, he was also the patron of logic, reason, and order. Cattle theft. That's chaos. That's personal. And worst of all, it's messy. Historians still argue whether Apollo's response was more theatrical rage or controlled divine justice. But either way, he starts looking. And unlike Hermes, he doesn't do subtle. The clouds darken slightly. Birds scatter. Somewhere, a fig tree drops fruit in nervous solidarity. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Hermes is lying on his back with that smug little baby smile. He strums the lyre again, and this time the music shimmers. It's the kind of sound that makes your spine go warm and your eyelids heavy. You start to drift, but not too far. You don't want to miss what comes next, because now Apollo arrives. He's narrowed down the trail what little of it exists and storms into Maya's cave like a solar-powered detective. Maya blinks awake, startled. One moment she's dreaming about ambrosia-flavored yogurt, the next, there's a glowing god pointing fingers at her newborn. She looks down at Hermes, who is brace yourself wrapped in a blanket, fake snoring. Yes. He's pretending to be asleep, like a college student faking flu symptoms to avoid a group project. Apollo is not amused. You, he says, pointing at the newborn. Where are my cows? Hermes opens one eye. Just one. Then he lets out a little whimper, a gurgle, and oh yes, he gaslights the god of reason. He insists he's just a baby. Can't talk. Can't walk. What's a cow? And somehow the performance is good. Too good. Even Maya starts to doubt herself. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some versions, Hermes actually delivers a full monologue about how unfair it is to accuse a helpless infant of cow theft. He even suggests they check his diapers for evidence. No stolen cows there. Apollo, still smoldering, drags the baby, not roughly mind you, but firmly up to Mount Olympus. It's time for divine court. And if this toddler wants to play games, he'll do it in front of Zeus himself. The trek up Mount Olympus is misty and strange. You ride along tucked somewhere between Apollo's stern shoulder and Hermes' increasingly confident grin. Birds scatter as they ascend, and the air grows thinner, colder, charged with divine tension. At the summit, Olympus sprawls like a luxury resort crossed with a marble fortress. Gods lounge on cloud-cushioned thrones, sipping nectar and gossiping about mortals who can't remember which offerings go in which temple. Then Zeus leans forward. He raises an eyebrow at the scene, one irate sun god, one giggling baby, and a missing herd. It's the start of a mythological sitcom, really. Now here's where things get interesting. Zeus, Hermes' dad, by the way, doesn't fly into a rage. He watches, listens. And when Hermes opens his tiny mouth and spins a tale of innocence so elaborate it borders on performance art, Zeus laughs. Yes, the king of gods, master of thunderbolts, just chuckles. Because even he can see it, this kid's going places. Still, justice is justice. The cows must be returned. Hermes shrugs as if to say, "Fine, you got me." But before any further punishment can drop, he offers something else a song. He pulls out his lyre, strums a few mellow notes, and lets the music do the talking. Apollo stops. The gods stop. Even time seems to slow. The melody is golden and honey-sweet, full of rivers and rain, of lazy afternoons, and the kind of nostalgia you didn't know you had. It's music that makes you want to nap under a fig tree for the rest of eternity. And just like that, everything changes. The music settles like warm sunlight across Olympus. You float in it, lazy and content, as if the lyre strings are plucking your own heartbeat into harmony. Apollo, once fire-eyed and justice-bound, now just stares. His jaw relaxes, his eyes soften. And that furrow between his golden brows gone. You glance around the marble-pillared hall. Even the fates have paused mid-spin, threads, dangling lips parted. Ares has set down his sword. Aphrodite leans closer, lips curling into a sly smile. Somewhere off-screen, Dionysus drops a grape. Apollo blinks, then he does something no one expects. He asks to try the lyre. Hermes, grinning like a raccoon who just outwitted a hunter, hands it over with the careful ceremony of a child, offering a macaroni necklace to the Pope. Apollo plucks one note, then another. The sound is richer than his golden bow, smoother than his sun chariot's wheels. And right there under the amused gaze of Zeus, a deal is struck not with a bang, but with a gentle strum. Here's your mainstream fact. In ancient Greek mythology, Apollo does become the official god of music and the lyre because of Hermes. That tricky little baby gives him the instrument as a peace offering. It's one of the few times a god doesn't earn a title by conquering something, but by vibing. Now the cows. They're still missing, technically, but Hermes, now practically hosting the court like a game show contestant, agrees to return them. No divine smiting needed. No lightning bolts. Just a handshake, a song, and a grin that promises more mischief ahead. Still, Hermes isn't quite done. Want to see something weird, he asks? Or at least his gurgling baby noises seem to suggest it. From beneath his swaddling cloth, he pulls out something even Zeus hasn't seen before, a fire starter, made from twirling sticks. It's primitive. Smoky. Absolutely beneath Olympus standards. But it works. He uses it to light a bundle of dried reeds, then casually tosses in some cowhide. Apollo winces. Quirky tidbit time. Some tellings of the myth claim Hermes invents both the technique of making fire by friction and the idea of sacrifice all in one afternoon. He roasts the meat, sprinkles, and herbs and arranges the bones into tidy piles. It's a divine meal prep kit. Keto-friendly. This moment, while half bizarre and wholly cheeky, actually seeds one of Greek religion's most important practices, burnt offerings. Even though Hermes is being playful, the gods start to realize that this baby might just understand something about mortal ritual that they haven't thought of yet. Historians still argue whether this myth was retrofitted to explain existing rituals or actually inspired early versions of them. Either way, it's oddly specific, especially for a newborn. So the cattle are returned mostly. Hermes might have renamed a few and forgotten to mention the one that wandered into a ravine. Apollo doesn't mind, not anymore. He's playing his new lyre and humming like a bard in training. Back down in Arcadia, things return to a sort of divine normal. The sky clears, the birds resume chirping slightly off-key, and Maya. She finally gets her nap, but not for long. Because Hermes is already crawling into his next scheme. Let's rewind for just a moment. You're back on the hill watching Hermes pluck wildflowers with the innocent glee of a child who definitely didn't gaslight a sun god earlier. He's babbling to himself and tracing constellations in the dirt. But when he looks up, his eyes are calculating. Here's a lesser-known fact. Hermes didn't stop at the lyre. That was just day one. Next on his divine to-do list, inventing commerce. And sandals, and dreams. And if some myths are to be believed, the very concept of lying. He becomes the patron of thieves, messengers, shepherds, merchants, and unexpected travelers, which in Greek mythology is basically everyone except maybe Poseidon, who prefers to stay in his underwater man cave. You float above the hills with Hermes now gliding past the olive groves and the sleepy goats. He's humming again, but the tune is different this time. Faster, twitchier. Less lullaby, more I've got a plan, and you're not ready. And honestly, you aren't. But you follow anyway because even sleep has paused to see what this baby god will do next. Hermes toddles through the dawn grass, bare feet damp with dew, humming the same tune he played for Apollo. Only now it's been remixed into something more mischievous. You watch as he picks up a beetle, examines it closely, then tucks it into a hollow reed like it's some sort of musical surprise. It hums faintly. He giggles. You suppress the urge to warn the beetle. At this point, Hermes is approximately 2 days old and has already invented musical instruments fire by friction and reverse cow camouflage. But now he's about to give the world something arguably even more dangerous footwear. Here comes your mainstream historical fact. The Greeks believed Hermes invented the first winged sandals. Not metaphorically, literally sandals with tiny wings on the ankles. They weren't just a fashion statement, though they definitely slapped. They made him the swiftest of the gods, able to flit between realm cities and divine gossip circles with barely a breeze. The version you're watching is a little more DIY. Hermes finds 2 broad leaves, straps them to his feet with sheep gut string, and then because he's Hermes, plucks a couple feathers from a passing goose who really didn't see it coming. One squawk later, the world's first Air Hermes are born. Naturally, the moment he puts them on, he zips forward like a toddler in a supermarket cart, heading for the candy aisle. He crashes into a tree. Leaves rain down. Somewhere a squirrel swears. Still, he's thrilled. Now I can deliver messages. He says in what might be his first fully coherent sentence, which no one is prepared for, including you. The baby god is growing fast, and with that growth comes ambition. He decides he needs an official title. Something impressive. Something that'll look good on business cards or chiseled into marble statues. So off he goes, zooming to Mount Olympus, still barefoot, except for the feather-strapped salad shoes, leaving behind a trail of disturbed goats and slightly scorched pebbles. At Olympus, the gods are halfway through breakfast, which for Dionysus means grapes in a wine bath, and for Athena involves toast with calculated symmetry. Hermes bursts and skids on the polished floor and lands face first in a fruit bowl. Zeus sighs. What now? Hermes sits up, banana peel clinging to his hair like a golden laurel. I want a job, he announces. Zeus raises an eyebrow, possibly impressed, possibly trying not to laugh. You're 2 days old. Exactly, time's wasting. And so begins the godliest job interview of all time. You get the sense this isn't Hermes' first con. He's already rehearsed his pitch. He wants to be messenger of the gods. Not just because he's fast, though he is, or because he's clever, also true, but because the universe needs better delivery times. Zeus chuckles, but Hermes presses on. Here comes your quirky tidbit according to some Orphic traditions. Hermes wasn't just the god's FedEx courier, he was also a psychopomp. That's not a weird insult. It means he guided souls to the underworld. Yes, Hermes was basically ancient Greece's cosmic Uber driver for the dead. This dual role, messages above, souls below, makes him one of the few gods to move freely between realms. Unlike Hades, who prefers staying in his underworld man cave, no judgment, Hermes is everywhere, and it's that in-betweenness that fascinates scholars to this day. Historians still argue whether Hermes began as a separate rural trickster deity, folded into the Olympian pantheon, or whether he evolved from one of the Proto-Indo-European gods of thresholds and travel. What's certain is that he always danced at the edges between life and death truth and lies Olympus and earth. Zeus, intrigued and maybe a little tired of flying his own thunderbolt memos, gives a slow nod. All right, he says, messenger. But I want weekly reports. And no more cow theft. Define cow. Hermes replies with the practiced innocence of someone who once taught a tortoise to harmonize. And just like that, he's in. Newly employed and absolutely thrilled. Hermes sprints back down to Arcadia. He has a mission now, well, several. Deliver dreams, carry wishes, whisper secrets, steal apples, guide souls, find better olives. He's got a scroll longer than a river and more enthusiasm than a golden retriever with a caffeine addiction. You follow as he skates across clouds, tapping Mount Helicon to deliver a muse's inspiration, pausing in Thebes to chuckle at a philosopher's failed riddle, and landing at the foot of a sleeping traveler to whisper a dream shaped like a distant memory. And somewhere in between, he finds time to rearrange a few statues for comedic effect. You know, just to keep things fresh. The world beneath Olympus is changing faster now. Travel becomes easier. Trade routes emerge. Rumors fly. Prayers race upward. Messages no longer need wings of chance. They've got Hermes. And you're just trying to keep up with the world's most efficient baby god in winged sandals and a fruit hat. You wake up metaphorically inside a meadow again, still tracing Hermes' whirlwind footsteps across a world he's remaking one clever prank and hasty message at a time. But somewhere, the past catches up. Because you know who hasn't forgotten the whole cow-stealing thing. Apollo. Golden boy, god of the lyre, bringer of sunlight and sarcastic eyebrows. He's been busy, of course, composing epics, giving cryptic prophecies at Delphi, maybe inventing the first passive-aggressive haiku. But the mystery of his missing cattle still nags at him like a song stuck in his divine head. And now he's got a clue. You watch as Apollo, all gleaming robes and righteous indignation, strides down from Olympus like a solar-powered detective. The cows had strange footprints, remember, walking backward. Apollo finally notices something weird about that. He spots the faintest trace of sandal prints, tiny sandal prints, like crib-sized. And now we're off again. Apollo blazing across the hills. Golden cloak billowing like a very judgmental parachute, following a trail of feathers, misplaced tortoiseshell, and discarded baby-sized sandals that frankly look more decorative than practical. Eventually he arrives at Maya's cave. Let's pause here. You remember Maya, Hermes' nymph mother champion, sleeper lover of naps and absolutely not confrontations. When Apollo storms into her sanctuary, glowing like a smug bonfire, she's mid-doze on a bed of moss. He demands justice. She opens one eye. He's what, 3 days old, she mutters. Apollo isn't having it. So he points at Hermes now curled up beside the fire, pretending to snore like a cartoon wolf. There's still cow hair in his curls. His winged sandals are askew. Apollo lifts an eyebrow so sharp it could slice ambrosia. Hermes yawns, stretches, murmurs something about baby rights, and thus begins one of the strangest god-on-god courtroom dramas in all of mythology. Apollo furious, Maya drowsy, Hermes armed with baby fat cheeks and a grin you'd never trust alone with a wallet. Your mainstream historical fact trials between gods weren't unheard of in Greek lore. Disputes happened. They just rarely involved livestock musical instruments and infants who could deliver closing arguments with dimples. Apollo accuses Hermes of theft. Hermes denies everything, vigorously. I wasn't even born, he insists with a flawless grammar. And even if I was, I'm far too small to handle full-grown cattle. Do you see these arms? He flexes. It's not persuasive. Maya sighs. She's clearly regretting not reading the fine print of divine maternity leave. Hermes pivots. What if I give you something better than cows? Apollo frowns. Better than cows. And now Hermes plays his trump card. He pulls out the lyre. That little instrument made from tortoise-shell twine and divine mischief. He strums a few notes. The cave practically inhales. And Apollo, god of music, the arts, all things poetic and golden freezes. You watch his eyes widen. The notes are soft, melodic, impossibly rich. They tangle in the air like honey-soaked thread. One single chord and suddenly cows don't even matter. This is the moment the world gains the lyre. Your quirky tidbit. The Greeks credited Hermes with inventing not just the lyre but the panpipes, and potentially even the concept of musical scales. The gods didn't just embody things, they gifted them, or in this case, bartered them. Apollo practically melts. That's exquisite, he whispers. Juan Hermes offers with the guileless generosity of someone who absolutely knows he's winning. A silence hangs. Apollo nods, and just like that, the great cow dispute is over. Hermes hands over the lyre with a flourish. Apollo, in return, not only forgives the theft, but promises to teach Hermes the art of prophecy, just a little, mind you. Nothing too career-threatening. This is the beginning of one of mythology's most unexpected bromances. The god of sunlight and the god of shade. Structure and chaos, lyre and lyre. Historians still argue whether this myth was designed to reflect actual cultic compromises between older rustic deities like Hermes and newer Olympian ones like Apollo. Some scholars believe the whole story might be a mythologized handshake between competing priesthoods, kind of like ancient divine PR. But for now, you're just watching a newborn god play his opponent like a fiddle, or rather a tortoiseshell ukulele. Apollo, lyre in hand, turns to leave. You're dangerous, he says. Hermes just smiles. I get that a lot. And with that, he flops back onto his moss pile, snuggles into a fleece stolen probably from one of the cows, and finally falls asleep. For about 8 minutes. Because being the messenger of the gods, it's a full-time gig. You barely blink before Hermes is up again. The moss bed still has a Hermes-shaped imprint. But the baby god is gone already, streaking across the sky in a flash of winged ankles and absolutely no regard for celestial bedtime. Now that he's made peace with Apollo and offloaded a stolen herd in exchange for a top-tier musical invention, Hermes is ready for more mischief. Of course he is. Because apparently being forgiven for divine livestock burglary isn't enough. He wants in. This is the moment Hermes sets his gaze on the ultimate prize, Olympus itself. Not just as a guest, not just as someone who borrows a cloud sofa and snacks on divine grapes. No, Hermes wants a seat at the table. A real one. With his name carved in glowing letters and a job title longer than most human lifespans. So he zips straight to Zeus. You imagine him arriving at Mount Olympus like a toddler crashing a corporate boardroom meeting, except somehow winning. Zeus, almighty king of the gods, wielder of thunderbolts, and father of so many half-siblings, is watching the clouds roll in, when Hermes appears out of nowhere, hair tousled by wind and ambition. Dad Hermes says breezily, I'd like a promotion. Zeus raises an eyebrow. Promotion from what you were born last Thursday? Hermes grins. Exactly, and look what I've already done. And then he lists it all. The lyre, the cows, the lies. The deal brokering. The fact that Apollo, golden, stubborn, terrifyingly radiant Apollo, is not only not furious anymore, but actually composing songs about how nifty his new lyre sounds. Zeus listens amused. And here's your mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greek mythology, Olympus was not just a mountain, it was the symbolic throne room of divine order. Each god had a portfolio. Hermes wasn't just trying to be cute, he wanted a title, a job, a purpose within the celestial bureaucracy. You picture the boardroom now. Zeus, Hera, Athena, the whole sparkly gang. And there's Hermes' legs swinging off the armrest, pitching his personal resume with all the subtlety of a caffeinated playwright. I could deliver messages, he offers. Fast ones. Like, really fast. Zeus tilts his head. We already have Iris for that. Hermes shrugs. But can she also sneak into Hades and back before lunch? Silence. Hermes keeps going. I'll be the god of travelers, he says, of trade, of clever speech, of what let's just call it creative truth management. You see Hera lean over to Athena and mutter, he means lying. Also thieves. Hermes adds cheerfully, but like the fun kind, and sleep, and boundaries, and diplomacy, and Zeus holds up a hand. Enough. A beat passes. Then Zeus smiles. Slowly, like a storm cloud deciding not to rain. For now. You remind me of me, he says. Hermes blinks. Was that a compliment? Sort of. Zeus replies, you're hired. And just like that, Hermes becomes. Hermes, not just the sneaky baby god, but the messenger. The guide. The one who shows up with zero warning but always gets it done. Your quirky tidbit here. Hermes becomes one of the only Greek gods who can travel freely between Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. He literally invents divine commuting. He even gets a snazzy new accessory, the caduceus, a staff with twin snakes, often confused to this day with the rod of Asclepius, the actual symbol of medicine. Oops. Historians still argue whether Hermes was a fusion of multiple older deities. Some say his cult evolved from pre-Hellenic trickster spirits or ancient boundary stone gods called Herme, those, very anatomically enthusiastic roadside statues. Either way, in this myth, he levels up. Back on Earth, you watch his influence grow. Merchants start whispering his name before tricky deals. Travelers leave offerings at crossroads. Poets call on him to untangle stubborn stanzas. And Hermes. He doesn't just deliver messages, he listens. He watches. He nudges fate gently in one direction or another depending on his mood, or the freshness of the figs left on his altar. You feel a breeze stir your hair, just a trickle of divine momentum. Hermes is already off again, delivering some scroll, retrieving a lost soul, sneaking into a dream like a god-shaped idea. He's not just part of Olympus anymore. He's the one who keeps it running. You follow Hermes now, wind-whipped and wide-eyed as he zips downward from Olympus, curls around a storm cloud like it's a banister, and lands somewhere entirely unexpected, the underworld. That's right. The place where souls go, the land of shadows and fairy tales and absolutely no refunds. And you're tagging along like a reluctant interned sandals, skidding on dew-damp grass as the entrance yawns before you. A crevice in the earth that exhales cool mist and smells faintly of old bronze coins and damp pomegranate seeds. But Hermes doesn't hesitate. He's one of the few gods allowed to come and go from this realm. This is his new job now, psychopomp, which is a $10 word for someone who gently escorts souls after death, preferably without losing them in a field of ghostly wheat. He whistles as he walks caduceus, swinging like a metronome for the dead. Mainstream fact. The Greeks genuinely believed Hermes had a vital role in easing the transition from life to death. He was comfort, not judgment. Not the guy with the ledger or the terrifying fangs. Hermes was the one who showed up after the last breath and said, "Hey, let's walk a while." He wasn't feared, he was trusted. Down here, though, things are different. You feel it in the hush of the stones, the way shadows flicker, just a second too long before retreating. The river Styx murmurs nearby, its black surface flat as polished obsidian, and waiting on its bank is Charon, the famously cranky ferryman. Hermes nods to him like an old coworker at the water cooler. Busy day. Charon grunts, they keep coming, don't tip. Hermes flips him a drachma anyway, for your playlist. The ferry drifts into view, less haunted gondola, more wobbly leaf on dark water. You step aboard almost expecting an oar to pass right through your chest. But it doesn't. Hermes is anchoring you here, holding your presence like a hand on the small of your back. Across the river lies the true underworld, layered and vast. There's the asphodel meadows, where the average souls drift like dandelion fluff. There's Elysium, a dreamy VIP section for heroes and poets. And then there's Tartarus, the divine basement, where punishment hums in low, echoing growls. Hermes glides through it all cool as marble. You imagine him slipping past spirits whispering directions like a ghostly GPS, patting shoulders, pointing toward reincarnation or eternal naps. Sometimes he just listens. Sometimes he sings. And here's your quirky detail. Some myths say Hermes invented a lullaby just for the souls. He guided an ancient melody that calmed even the most restless spirits. A tune so gentle that allegedly it could put Cerberus to sleep. Speaking of Cerberus, you round a corner and there he is, three-headed hulking, drooling tail thudding like a war drum. The great underworld watchdog. He growls once, then sneezes. Then, with shocking affection, all three heads nuzzle Hermes like a Labrador, greeting its favorite mailman. Hush now, Hermes whispers. They're just passing through. Cerberus lies back down with a snore so deep it rustles cobwebs off stalactites. And here in this strange quiet, you sense the delicate magic of Hermes' role. It's not about tricks now. It's about tenderness, transition, saying goodbye with grace. Historians still argue whether this softer side of Hermes was a later addition part of the Greeks trying to soften their pantheon's hard edges. But some say it was always there buried beneath the giggles and thefts and golden apple scams. Hermes was complex, fast and slow, mischievous and kind. As you follow him through fields of sighing spirits, you realize something important. Hermes doesn't belong to one world. He belongs to all of them. Earth, Olympus, the underworld. They're all just pit stops along his cosmic paper route. He balances in between, a threshold god, the embodiment of liminality itself. You glance down and the grass at your feet is blooming just a little. Hermes, still humming, leaves tiny flowers in his wake. And then just like that, it's time to go. You take the ferry back. Karen doesn't say goodbye. Cerberus waves one paw, and Hermes. He simply flickers and vanishes before you can ask where next. Because next is always happening with him. You find yourself back under an endless blue sky, the smell of warm earth and fresh figs teasing your nose as Hermes reappears this time in the bustling marketplaces of ancient Greece. Imagine it, the dusty streets alive with chatter. The clatter of sandals on stone, the smell of roasting lamb, mingling with sharp spices and the tang of fresh olives. Hermes weaves through it all with ease, slipping between vendors shouting their wares and customers haggling over prices. He's the god of trade after all, a role that fits his slick, fast-talking nature perfectly. Here's a mainstream fact. In many Greek cities, merchants would leave small statues or offerings to Hermes before setting off on long journeys, hoping for safe passage and profitable deals. He was the patron of commerce travelers and even cunning negotiation. But you notice something odd as you watch Hermes in action. He's not just overseeing honest trade. No, he's also the god of trickery, and not just the innocent kind. He's the one who might slyly tip the scales in his favorite merchant's favor, or whisper just the right half-truth to close a tough bargain. The market buzzes with energy, but there's also an undercurrent of whispered secrets and sidelong glances. Hermes thrives here in the gray areas where cleverness and charm mean more than brute strength or straight honesty. Your quirky tidbit. Ancient coins sometimes bore Hermes's image, but with a wink, one tiny detail like a wing on his helmet, or a mischievous smirk that suggested even the money itself had a sense of humor. Some historians think these coins were early good luck charms for merchants, but others argue they were more like subtle reminders. Be clever, but watch your back. Speaking of which, you spot Hermes leaning against a stall, chatting up a trader who's trying to sell a sack of authentic silks that you suspect were more cotton than mulberry worm. Hermes' grin is almost fatherly as he offers advice on spotting fake goods, but the gleam in his eye tells you he's amused by the whole dance of deception. Historians still argue whether Hermes' role as the god of thieves and commerce developed from an older, more shadowy trickster figure, or if it was a deliberate addition by Greek storytellers to explain the unpredictable nature of markets. You imagine Hermes now not just as a divine messenger, but as the original hustler, equal parts helpful guide and sly opportunist. And as you watch the marketplace fade behind you, you catch the soft jingle of his winged sandals already racing ahead, chasing the next deal, the next story, the next quiet laugh. You find yourself back under an endless blue sky, the smell of warm earth and fresh figs teasing your nose as Hermes reappears this time in the bustling marketplaces of ancient Greece. Imagine it, the dusty streets alive with chatter, the clatter of sandals on stone, the smell of roasting lamb, mingling with sharp spices and the tang of fresh olives. Hermes weaves through it all with ease, slipping between vendors shouting their wares and customers haggling over prices. He's the god of trade, after all, a role that fits his slick, fast-talking nature perfectly. Here's a mainstream fact. In many Greek cities, merchants would leave small statues or offerings to Hermes before setting off on long journeys, hoping for safe passage and profitable deals. He was the patron of commerce travelers and even cunning negotiation. But you notice something odd as you watch Hermes in action. He's not just overseeing honest trade. No, he's also the god of trickery, and not just the innocent kind. He's the one who might slyly tip the scales in his favorite merchant's favor, or whisper just the right half-truth to close a tough bargain. The market buzzes with energy, but there's also an undercurrent of whispered secrets and sidelong glances. Hermes thrives here in the gray areas where cleverness and charm mean more than brute strength or straight honesty. Your quirky tidbit. Ancient coins sometimes bore Hermes' image, but with a wink, one tiny detail like a wing on his helmet, or a mischievous smirk that suggested even the money itself had a sense of humor. Some historians think these coins were early good luck charms for merchants, but others argue they were more like subtle reminders. Be clever, but watch your back. Speaking of which, you spot Hermes leaning against a stall, chatting up a trader who's trying to sell a sack of authentic silks that you suspect were more cotton than mulberry worm. Hermes' grin is almost fatherly as he offers advice on spotting fake goods, but the gleam in his eye tells you he's amused by the whole dance of deception. Historians still argue whether Hermes' role as the god of thieves and commerce developed from an older, more shadowy trickster figure, or if it was a deliberate addition by Greek storytellers to explain the unpredictable nature of markets. You imagine Hermes now not just as a divine messenger, but as the original hustler, equal parts helpful guide and sly opportunist. And as you watch the marketplace fade behind you, you catch the soft jingle of his winged sandals already racing ahead, chasing the next deal, the next story, the next quiet laugh. Hermes' tune fades like a dream as you rise from the stone and follow him toward a sun-dappled path winding through an ancient olive grove. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional chirp of cicadas create a slow, steady rhythm, perfect for a god who's about to reveal one of his lesser-known talents, the patronage of sports and athletic games. You probably didn't expect that from the fleet-footed messenger. But yes, Hermes was considered a guardian of young athletes, and even the original promoter of athletic competitions in Greece. Picture it, dusty fields, filled with the scent of sun-baked earth crowds, gathered for foot races and wrestling matches, the occasional triumphant shout echoing through the hills. The Greeks took sports seriously, not just for fun, but as a form of training discipline and even spiritual preparation. Hermes, with his winged sandals and quick reflexes, embodied the ideal athlete's qualities: speed, agility, and cunning. Here's a mainstream fact. Ancient Greeks believed that athletic success was a gift from the gods, and winners were often crowned with olive wreaths and praised in poems and songs. But Hermes' connection to sports wasn't just about competition. He was also seen as the god of boundaries and fair play, ensuring the games were honest, the rules respected, and the spirit of friendly rivalry preserved. Now your quirky tidbit: some ancient festivals included races dedicated specifically to Hermes, where participants would run barefoot or wear only a single sandal, an homage to his famously mismatched footwear. There's even a playful story about Hermes inventing the art of wrestling by accident when he tried to retrieve a stolen cow and ended up grappling with a mischievous nymph. Historians still argue whether Hermes' association with sports was a natural extension of his swift nature or a later adaptation to connect him with the growing importance of athletic culture in Greek society. As you watch the runners poised at the starting line, muscles tense and eyes sharp, Hermes gives a quiet nod of encouragement, his ever-present grin lighting the scene. You can almost feel the thrill of movement, the surge of wind past your ears, the pounding heartbeat, the fleeting joy of pure speed. And then just as suddenly the race begins. You follow Hermes away from the lively sports field, the distant cheers fading into a calm countryside, dotted with wildflowers and gently swaying grasses. Here in this peaceful setting, Hermes takes on a quieter role, one that blends his knack for communication with a touch of mischief, the god of letters writing and even secret messages. Imagine the sun filtering softly through the trees, the warm breeze carrying the scent of ink and parchment, as Hermes pulls from his cloak a slender reed pen and a roll of papyrus. Mainstream fact: ancient Greeks believed Hermes invented the alphabet, or at least helped spread writing among mortals, making him a symbol not just of messages, but of literacy itself. Now, here's your quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources claim Hermes used secret codes and ciphers to protect divine messages, essentially inventing the earliest forms of cryptography, ancient encryption, before it was cool. You lean in fascinated as he sketches flowing symbols onto the papyrus, each stroke delicate but deliberate, a dance between art and code. Historians still argue whether Hermes' link to writing was a genuine part of his original mythology, or a later addition as literacy spread, and the Greeks sought divine origin stories for their new technologies. But here, in this serene moment, it's easy to see Hermes as the bridge between worlds, spoken word and written text knowledge, shared openly or whispered in secret. You watch as the papyrus scroll rolls closed, tucked safely back into Hermes' satchel, ready to carry words across great distances and generations. And you realize that without Hermes, the simple act of writing a letter, a note, or even a late-night text might feel a little less magical. You breathe in the quiet, the rustle of leaves mingling with the faint scratch of pen on paper, feeling the gentle hum of communication that stretches through time. Hermes smiles knowingly, his eyes twinkling as if to say, "Words can travel faster than even I can fly." And with that thought, you feel a calm settling in words, stories and whispers all weaving softly through the night. The gentle rustling of leaves fades as you follow Hermes down a narrow, winding path toward a sleepy village nestled among rolling hills. It's late afternoon and the golden sunlight spills lazily over simple stone cottages, olive groves, and the faint smoke of cooking fires curling into the air. Here, Hermes dons another of his many hats, the god of hospitality, travelers, and guest friendship, but one of the most sacred duties in ancient Greece. You watch as he glides through the village square, greeting everyone with a knowing smile, nodding to the baker pulling fresh bread from the oven, and the potter shaping clay on a wheel. Mainstream fact: ancient Greeks practiced zenaya, a ritualized form of hospitality where hosts and guests were bound by mutual respect and care, often overseen and protected by Hermes himself. This sacred bond ensured travelers were welcomed and cared for, even strangers from distant lands, because breaking zenaya was considered an offense to the gods. Your quirky tidbit: some scholars believe Hermes' role in hospitality extended to the dead as well, guiding souls as a psychopomp, escorting them from the world of the living to the afterlife with the same care he showed to visitors. Historians still argue whether Hermes' duties as protector of travelers and guests were originally linked or became intertwined later as stories evolved to merge his messenger and guardian roles. As you stroll with Hermes through the village, you notice small altars and shrines dedicated to him, often placed near crossroads or outside homes, reminding all who passed of the importance of kindness and respect on journeys. You feel a soft warmth, a quiet assurance in the knowledge that no matter how far you roam, some ancient spirit watches over your path, ready to welcome or guide you. Hermes pauses to accept a simple cup of wine from a kindly elder, nodding his thanks before continuing on his way, a guardian of safe passage and gentle greetings. And as the village lights begin to flicker on, you sense the comfort of hospitality wrapping around you like a soft, worn blanket, familiar, soothing, and just the thing to help you drift off. You follow Hermes as dusk slips into night, the sky deepening to a rich indigo sprinkled with distant stars. He leads you toward a quiet hill overlooking a darkened plain, where ancient stone circles stand silhouetted like silent sentinels. Here, Hermes reveals yet another layer of his many roles, this time as the god of boundaries, thresholds, and those liminal places where one world meets another. Picture standing at the edge of two realms, feeling the subtle pull between them, like the soft tug of a tide barely noticed but always present. Mainstream fact: Hermes was often depicted as a guide at crossroads and gateways, places considered sacred and mysterious in ancient Greece, marking transitions not only physical but spiritual. Your quirky tidbit: some archaeologists suggest that stone markers or Hermes-carved statues named after Hermes served as ancient road signs or protective talismans, blending practical use with superstition. Historians still argue whether these boundary markers originated as religious symbols dedicated to Hermes or evolved from earlier local customs incorporated into his mythology. As you gaze over the landscape, you sense the sacred weight of these boundaries, not barriers, but invitations to pause, reflect, and respect the delicate balance of movement and stillness. Hermes kneels to trace a finger along the weathered stone, whispering an unspoken blessing. His presence reassuring you that crossing from one phase of life to another is natural and even necessary. The night air is cool and soft, the gentle rustle of leaves like a lullaby to the restless soul. And you realize that in every ending there is a beginning, in every threshold a promise, that whatever waits on the other side will come gently carried on the wings of a clever, kind God. You breathe deeply, the stillness wrapping around you like a slow, comforting exhale, the stars blinking softly overhead. Hermes rises and with a wink says, "Every journey has its crossing, best to travel light and with an open heart." The cool night air hums softly as you and Hermes descend from the hilltop, the stars above shimmering like scattered jewels on black velvet. Your steps slow, the world growing quieter as you approach a modest shrine nestled beneath an ancient olive tree. Here, Hermes pauses, his usual mischievous smile softened into something more tender, a moment of reflection on his many roles in the story that brought you here. You feel the gentle weight of his presence, the timeless dance of trickster and guardian messenger, and guide all wrapped into one. Mainstream fact, Hermes was worshipped throughout the Greek world, often in small, humble shrines like this, where travelers left offerings for safe passage or thanks for a kind favor. Your quirky detail. Some ancient rituals involved leaving small shoes or sandals as tokens, honoring Hermes' winged feet believed to carry prayers swiftly to the gods. Historians still debate whether Hermes' personality was originally a single unified deity or a fusion of several local gods whose stories merged over time. As you sit quietly beside the shrine, you feel the day's adventures settling in the echoes of laughter music and whispered secrets fading into a soft hum. Hermes leans in, his voice dropping to a whisper that seems meant only for you. Remember, the world is full of surprises, sometimes a stolen cow, sometimes a tune from a turtle shell. Stay curious and always travel light. You exhale slowly, the calm wrapping around you like a familiar blanket. The night deepens, the olive tree swaying gently in the breeze, and you know it's time to let go, to drift into the restful embrace of sleep. As your eyelids grow heavy, you carry with you the quiet magic of a God who dances between worlds, a reminder that even in the most ordinary moments there is wonder. Word count 1075. Now the wind down. Feel your breath slow, the steady rhythm like waves washing gently ashore. The world softens around you, colors dimming, sounds fading into a tranquil hush. Let your thoughts settle like leaves floating on a still pond, light, unburdened, calm. In this quiet space, you are safe, cradled by the gentle night and the whispered stories of gods who watch over the spaces between. The day's noise falls away, replaced by the soothing pulse of peace. As you drift, imagine the cool breeze through olive branches, the soft hum of crickets, the distant stars blinking their quiet farewell. Rest easy, knowing you carry the lightness of a trickster's laughter and the steady guidance of a messenger's wings. Sleep comes slow and deep, a velvet cloak wrapping you in dreams as sweet and mysterious as the myths themselves.